Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, episode 115.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we discuss our recent plays from PAX Unplugged. You know, back in December, because we're timely like that. Including plays of Stay Cool and Spy Club. We're also continuing our Hop series, talking about Columbus hops. And in our final round, we asked our listeners what their biggest gaming surprise of 2019 was. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. Know that all is for the best in the best of our
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
With American Whiz or Provolone.
Whiz.
I'm an American cheese person. We're talking about
Whiz,
Philadelphia.
you are allowed to be wrong.
Because
but
we're talking entirely about PAX Unplugged in this episode, and also just conventions in general, and I guess all the games we play at conventions, and who we meet at conventions, things like that.
how you shouldn't put cheese in either your board games or your beer.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm trying to think. Has anybody done a good cheese beer? No. No one has ever. Hey, yeah, let's just move on from this. This has gone totally out of control. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Draft Mechanic, the board games and craft beer podcast. If this is your first time, thank you so much for tuning in. You can find us on the internet at draftmechanic.net or on your favorite social medias at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook with the tag at draftmechanic.
We also have a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up there for this episode, as there is for every episode. So if we're saying something and you have an opinion on what we're talking about, or you just want to tell us that we're wrong, you can do it there.
Mm-hmm. If you're a provolone cheese person on your cheesesteak, please also share that opinion.
I mean, you don't have to.
No, I actually, can we just have that everybody jump in the guild and I'll put a poll up and you can tell us what your favorite cheese is on your cheesesteak.
Oh, cool. So you're doing this. Cool. If you happen to live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we do twice monthly gaming meetups. Our next one is going to be on February 6th at Good Road Cider Works, and then the one after that is going to be on February 18th at Salud Cerveceria. They are always on the first Thursday of the month at Good Road and the third Tuesday at Salud Cerveceria. So we would love to see you at one of those meetups.
Also, at the top of the episode, I always want to give a shout out to people who have picked up the Board Game Geek micro badge for Draft Mechanic. So big thanks to Beardy Jesse for picking that up since last episode. If you're interested in picking that up, you can find it in our guild. That's guild 2470, as Danielle stated. And we also have a thread in there. If you need the Geek Gold, we have an abundance of Geek Gold from the year-end BGG donation Geek Gold drive. Just go Geek Gold everywhere, stacking up on the shelves and on the tables and on the walls.
Due to a change in our contract, we are now required to let you know at the top of the episode that Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Grey Fox Games. Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted. They didn't say we had to say the tagline, but we might as well.
It's fun. It's so pleasant to say words.
So now you know that if you only listen to the first, 2 minutes.
Yeah. If you actually have just been listening to the very first 2 to 4 minutes of the podcast, I'm wondering why you continue to come back.
But do it because the download number is helpful. Thank you.
Give us that download. That's what matters, the download number. I feel like the Kickstarter gods heard me last week when I said, hey, we're not going to cover Kickstarters because there just aren't any Kickstarters. And last 2 weeks seem to have been like the biggest explosion in Kickstarters since the last one. That was a lot. There was a lot of stuff that went up on Kickstarter, and I'm not going to talk about all of it.
Yeah, I'm going to hold you to only talking about one Kickstarter an episode.
Can I say 0.1 things about a few other Kickstarters, though?
Fine.
The Dark Tower is making like $2 million.
Don't care.
There is a new Star Realms expansion and or set on Kickstarter that makes me very frustrated because it's just a bunch of foil cards and then like dials for life counters, and it all comes in a new box, which is really frustrating because last Kickstarter got me this really cool giant box to store everything in. I don't understand why we have another box.
Yeah, I think the thing that you left out there is that the foil cards are the foil cards of the cards you already have.
Oh,
They're not new foil cards.
Yeah,
so they've just literally made everything that you bought worthless.
I would really like those life tiles, though, and you can't get just those. So that's a bummer and dumb. Boo.
Boo.
Boo. Also, there is a new Tiny Dice Buddies Kickstarter up that I always talk about. Is the second set of the Classy Dice Buddies Kickstarter.
Cool.
So Yeah.
Check that out.
Cool
But
stuff.
talk about your thing you're supposed to talk about.
The one actual Kickstarter that we're going to feature in this particular episode is coming from Leader Games. It is Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile. This one is funding at just over $800,000 of its $50,000 goal. So yeah, I think they're going to make that one pretty clear. It's got over 9,500 backers as of time of recording. This one ends February 4th, 2020. Oh, wow. That's the first time I've had to say that way.
At 11 a.m.
Specifically at 11 a.m. So back it on the 3rd.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have like reasonable working hours, you may want to back that by the 3rd.
And this one has an estimated delivery of January 2021. It has just one pledge level, $90 for the base, plus the Kickstarter extras. It has a journal and an upgrade pack with metal coins and resin magic tokens.
So in Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile, you are battling for control, and one player is going to be playing the Chancellor, who is trying to stay in power. He doesn't have to get in power, he stays in power. And the other players are playing Exiles, who are trying to impose a new vision on the land. And it's not really a legacy game, but the thing that they are toting about this game is that it remembers your game state at the end of the game. At the end of every game, you're going to note down what happened in that game and the ending conditions, and it'll restructure the setup of the next game. So, like, if the example that they gave in the Kickstarter was like, if an empire is overthrown at the end of your game, you're going to start the next game rebuilding from the ruins of that overthrow.
Okay.
So it is, again, a little bit asymmetrical, which is sort of how Leader does things. So you have one person who is the Chancellor who's in charge, and everybody else trying to play Exiles who are imposing new visions, but the Chancellor can offer them to become citizens, and then they work together, but it's still a competitive game. Only one player can win. So you're trying to do things that are helpful to the Chancellor if you're a citizen, but still promote your own initiatives and be able to take over at the end, sort of jump to the lead there. This looks really interesting. I like the idea of having an impact on future setups, but not necessarily permanently changing like a legacy game would be. Obviously, Leader Games, this has beautiful Kyle Farron artwork, and the production is top-notch quality. It looks really, really pretty. I'm very excited to see how this turns out, and I'm excited to see this one. I also like that there's only one pledge level.
Yay.
You don't have to figure out like which 15,000 things you want and what combination that equals. You can add on card sleeves, but you don't have to, and it's not a separate pledge level. It's just an add-on.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, Leader Games had this for demo at PAX Unplugged, and it was booked up solid from like the very first second that they put time slots up for it, unsurprisingly. This is something that's been really hyped up for a while, a lot of anticipation. Obviously, Root was super strong with the same design team, Cole Worley and Kyle Farron doing art, and also the Leader Games backing and all that stuff. So this is obviously doing super well. You probably already know about this game, but it is something I wanted to highlight in case there are people out there that did not know there was a new asymmetric game from Leader Games that is Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile, and you have till the 4th of February, but only at 11 a.m. Eastern, not a minute after, because that's how Kickstarter works.
Yep, and we didn't talk about Kickstarter last episode, so we have no updates, and that is the end of the Kickstarter segment.
Got it done in less than 10. Yeah.
Nice.
Can we talk about board games?
I mean, let's talk about t-shirts first.
Let's maybe do that.
Want to wear your Draft Mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/draftmechanic for t-shirts.
All right, as promised, it is time for the PAX Unplugged recap episode.
Yep.
Perfectly timely. Yeah.
Hey, we said we would do one, and we're going to do one because we're keeping our word.
Yeah, and it's a good convention to talk about. It's new on the scene. This is the 3rd year it's been going. It's my 2nd year going. It's your 1st year going to PAX Unplugged. So it's important to, kind of have a talk about that, especially as we're kind of staring down the beginning of convention season. We're going to, tiny little local convention this coming weekend up in Raleigh-Durham, the Whose Turn Is It Anyway convention. And then I think, thankfully we don't have to do Gen Con housing booking this weekend, which is a plus.
No, tickets go on sale, I think, this weekend. Though.
Yeah, but yeah.
I do also think that it was interesting because a lot of the games that we played are games that, since it's not like right in the middle of big release season, they're not necessarily the newest, hippest games, and they're games that we might not have gotten a chance to talk about otherwise. Mm-hmm. So I do think it was a nice convention. I do think it was a nice convention for getting stuff played that might not necessarily be as super pressing, but is interesting and different.
Yeah, and I think there was also a nice little opportunity to get more qualitative time talking to a lot of publishers, because usually, like, if we go to a Gen Con or something, it's just this maddening crush of people and you're getting that, 30-second conversation with everybody. I feel like we got to have more of an opportunity to talk with a lot of publishers that we don't really run into a lot. Specifically, like the one that we're going to talk about a game from first, Scorpion Masqué. We have talked about Decrypto in the past, but we met up with one of their representatives and got to try a few different games from them. One of those was Stay Cool.
Yeah, one of the other ones that we got to play is not yet out in English, so I didn't put it on this list, and I'm sure we'll talk about it when it does come out. But we did get to play Stay Cool, which was released in 2019 in French, but is being released in February of 2020, so like seconds away,
Nice.
in English. It's up for pre-order on Miniature Market, I know already. If you look at their website, it looks like it's already out. But it is, Miniature Market is saying February for release on that. Right. It is from Le Scorpion Masqué, and it is 3 to 7 players in 10 to 30 minutes. The designer is Julian Sentis, the artist is Nils, and it is a game of multitasking, partying, and stressing.
All of those things are very true. So in the game of Stay Cool, you have basically 3 players playing at any time. You have one player who is the test subject of sorts, and they are being asked questions by the 2 other players. One player will be asking you questions that you must answer verbally, and the other player is asking you questions that you must answer by spelling them out on dice that have letters on them. They're going to ask you these questions simultaneously and repeatedly, and if you're not paying enough attention to one of the people as you're trying to answer questions, they're going to ask you again and louder until your brain breaks because you can't concentrate on 2 things at once, and then you just start repeating the word crickets a whole bunch.
Yeah.
This is what happened to me. I am not good at multitasking. Danielle, you are very good at multitasking.
I do it every day at work. Anybody who talks on the phone while they type into a computer will be perfectly fine with this game. And I think it very much simulates that activity because the dice that you're spelling things out with, there is some rhyme or reason to how the letters are distributed. There's one die that has vowels and all the other dice have consonants on them. So you know where to go for the vowel die if you're looking for something, but the rest of them you're just sort of flipping them around and trying to figure it out. But the words can only be so long that you have to answer. So it does sort of limit it a little bit. But it's the kind of thing that I do all the time. Like I talk to somebody and give them a verbal response to a question they've asked while I'm doing a task which is related to it, but completely different on my computer. And that sort of translated, I think I went through this and I got all the points that you could get on this. I answered all the questions for both. And I think it's the kind of game that is fun and relatively easy for people who are really good at this, but people who, like you just said, you're not great at multitasking, it's going to be super stressful for.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time tasking at times.
Yeah. At one point, I was asking you to name 3 kinds of crickets that were not or 3 kinds of bugs that were not like ants, mosquitoes, or something else.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was. It was a month and a half ago at this point. And all you had was crickets. And you finally got spider out, and I was willing to give it to you because I felt bad. But the Scorpion Masqué guy was like, "That's not a bug. That's an arachnid.
Not an insect. That's an arachnid." Yeah,
it said an insect on the card. So if you think that you have the kind of group that will either be good at this or enjoy the stress of being not good at this, because it's just a game. You just get a number at the end. It's not like it really matters. If you screw it up, you're not going to lose your job because you couldn't do both things. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you did. You seemed like you were.
I had fun with how zany the moment was. I definitely do not want to play this frequently. I would do it once or twice. I'll do it every now and then. But I feel like if I played this enough, I would get very, very depressed at myself and very disappointed with my brain's inability to function in that way. But again, it's kind of the fun. And there's other games that my brain is perfect for. And I don't know what those games are off the top of my head, but I know that there are some games, party games that I'm very, tied into. But this one, it definitely made me feel uncomfortable with how I was unable to stop saying the word crickets. And that's a weird feeling, in a way, to just not be able to get your brain to process what is even going on in either of the situations. So fun. Yeah, a lot of fun, but also a little kind of confusing and frustrating for me.
I do think this might be good for groups that don't know each other really well. When we talked about Wavelength recently, we did actually talk about Wavelength, didn't we?
We talked about it at some point.
one of the problems that we often encounter with Wavelength is it is a game that you will be intrinsically better at if you know the people on your team.
Yeah.
Codenames has a similar problem to a less extent, but
a lot of kind of clue-giving games.
Yeah, anytime you're giving a clue and you're expecting an answer from people, it is really helpful if you know those people and how they think. You're not going to be any better at Stay Cool if you know the people asking you questions, because they're not subjective questions. They're objective questions where you have to just provide the answer. So I think if you're looking for a party game for people who are not particularly close, this might be one that will work well, because they don't need to know each other at all. They just need to know relatively simple facts. I don't think any of the questions were particularly obscure either.
True. Yeah, definitely a fun experience. I would like to play it again at some point, but I can definitely see myself not wanting to play this too often out of that kind of disappointment in myself.
Oh, I'm sorry you were disappointed.
That's okay. You can continue to play it. You will be able to stay cool, which is the name of the game. So we've ended that segment. All right, up next, Arraial, coming in 2018 from Meebo Games and Pandasaurus.
Now,
what?
Coming in 2018?
It was arrived in the past. It arrived in the... Yeah, I don't know. 1 to 4 players, 30 minutes. This is designed by Nuno Bizarro Santiero and Paulo Soledade. This is art by Nuna Saravia, and it is a game of tile laying, Tetris, and groovy street festival dates.
Yeah, in Arraial, you are going to be given a board, and you're going to do a very Tetris-like thing. You're going to be taking tiles from a central wheel, and you're going to be placing them onto your board to trying to complete rows, and also to form groups of the same color. So the tiles touching of the same color will help get you a bonus. Anytime you complete a row, you are going to take the bar that is across the top of your board, which starts a couple of rows down, and you are going to move it up, giving yourself more room on which to lay tiles. However, at the end of each round, you're going to be moving that bar down again, so you need to perpetually be finishing rows in order to be able to get new space to be able to place your new tiles in. That's one of the things that makes this a little different than your normal Tetris-style game. The other thing that I think makes this game a little different than your normal Tetris-style game is that the tiles that you're placing are on this wheel in the center, and as you take them on your turns, you have to place them in the orientation that they are. And one of the things you can do on your turn instead of placing a tile is rotate that wheel so that when the next player goes to take those tiles, they're not in an ideal orientation, or they're in one that's going to make it really difficult to continue their color grouping, or just leave them with a space that's going to be difficult to fill, so that they're not going to be able to complete the row and their bar will move down, or they won't be able to gain more space. That being said, while that sounds really cool, those two aspects seem like it's going to really change the way the tile laying game is. There's not a whole lot more than that. You're just trying to make these patches of the same color with your Tetris-style tiles, and you go through it, and you just want to be the most efficient at that.
Yeah, I will say, throughout the playing of the game, I never really felt like I was making any kind of, smart decisions. I felt like there was always the correct way to play out a turn based on, I have to rotate this so that this tile is worth anything, because since you can't rotate the tiles once they're coming onto your board, and you can't do any kind of fun T-spins or any other advanced Tetris terminology, it's kind of like, well, this piece will only fit if I turn this way, so I'm just going to get one action this turn or one tile this turn. So it kind of just comes down to a bit of luck of when stuff comes out onto the board. The placement, the benefit you get off of placing tiles in big groups is fun, because it's always fun to try to make, big groups out of weird shaped tiles, and then you get the biggest of this color thing, and you feel very good about yourself. But I never felt like I had a ton of control, especially with only 3 tiles to choose from any particular round. If you got ahead of me 2 tiles on yellow, I would just be like, well, I'm not going to waste any time on that. There's no chance of me catching up.
Yeah, because catching up doesn't even help. You need to exceed the grouping size, which means you essentially have to place another tile, because the tiles are all the same number of the same color.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible maybe no more of that color will come out in an opportune time for me. I feel like that function might work better at a more player count game. More players?
At a higher player count.
Yeah, there we go. I'm getting my words back, y'all. These are my words.
Yeah, I did enjoy the theme of this game, that you were establishing neighborhood street festivals.
It's super cute.
And that the art was really joyful as well. It was not necessarily the most, true to life style, but it had a really jazzy street festival-y feel about it in the way it was drawn, and I enjoyed that. And each tile has a different person who's supposedly attending your street festival, and they all had sort of fun depictions of the characters, which I enjoyed. So A+ for the theme. The tile laying game was a little bit on the blah side.
Yeah. Well, that is Arraial.
Next up is a game that I know you're excited about because you brought it over from Germany.
There are literally 2 games that I've imported from Germany that aren't Carcassones. One of them was Noch, and the other one is...
Noch so gut.
So good.
So gut.
So...
It is a 2019 release from Schmidt Spiele. It plays 1 to 6 players in 20 minutes and is designed by Inga and Marcus Brand, as I believe the original Noch was.
Yep.
The art is
graphic
by
design.
Leon Schiffer, and it is a game of rolling, writing, and surprisingly bombs.
Boom.
You know, like all roll and write games.
Yeah, so Noch, or as it is known here in the United States, Encore, which was brought over by Stronghold Games in 2019.
Encore so gut.
It has a second, there's a second Noch that I just found out because I watch the internet for board game stuff constantly, and I saw somebody post a picture of it, and then I went over to the internet where I can find it, and I immediately ordered myself a copy of this because...
So wait, you went from the internet to the internet?
I went to the other internet, the German internet. I went to internet.de.
Cool.
And that's where the German board game came from.
So good.
I actually just ordered it off of BGG through the Geek Market, and I feel fine with that. Anyway, Noch, roll and write game. It's known as Encore here in the United States. When you play the game of Noch, you have a sheet in front of you that is a grid of squares. The grid is broken up into polyomino shapes of 1 to 6 connected blocks of 5 different colors, and that all matches up to the set of dice you have. In most games, you have 6 dice. You have 3 that are numbers and 3 that are colors. Each has the 1 through 5 or the 5 colors, and then there's a joker side on it that you get to, you can a few times throughout the game just choose to use a number or color of your choice for using certain. You have a certain number of jokers you're able to use in a game, but your goal in the game is to fill up your sheet as effectively as possible. When you are the active player, you roll all 6 dice. You reserve 1 of the numbers and 1 of the colors for yourself, and that means that you're going to have to mark off that many of whatever color you chose. So if I take the orange die and the 5 die, then I have to fill out 5 orange blocks. The catch is you have to use all of the pips, and they must all be in the same connected color block, and anything you fill in must either start in the center column or be connected to X's you've already X'd out on your sheet. So you're going to start in the very center, you're going to work your way out from there, and hopefully throughout the game fill out your columns. When you complete a column, you get points for it. If you're the first person to complete it, you get more points than other players, and also you get points if you're the first to fill out a full color as well as you're going through there. Like I said, there's jokers that are worth points if you don't use them by the end of the game, and pretty much that's what you're doing in Noch, and you're just going to continue to go around until somebody's filled out, I think, 2 colors.
So what's different about Noch so gut?
Noch so gut adds a whole additional set of stuff. So first, instead of just columns that you're working on completing, as you fill out horizontal rows, which are, I think, 20 wide or 19 wide, something like that, you will get additional points for filling out a completed row, and each row also has a bonus. The bonuses tie into a bunch of different things, which are the other new features of the game. There is a, basically spending the gold die. You have a new 7th die that has some like one-use powers that allow you to fill out your sheet in interesting ways. There are also hearts, which is another section at the bottom of the sheet under each of the columns. Off to the left of your sheet, you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 value for your heart. And as you cross off hearts there and you earn those hearts, when you complete a column, you get additional points of whatever your heart level is at that time. So if you go for a bunch of hearts early on, all of your columns are going to be worth a lot more points. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that it adds in these bombs. The bombs are something that kind of breaks the way that you fill stuff out. Bombs can go anywhere on your sheet, and they are just a 2x2 square of X's you get to make, and they don't have to be all the same color. They just have to be a 2x2 square, and you can use those on top of stuff you've already X'd out. So like if I really wanted to get this particular 2x2 square, even though I already had one of those things filled out, I could use a bomb to fill out some of that stuff. Maybe that's to secure a row faster, or secure a column faster, or finish out a color, because obviously towards the end of the game, you're getting really limited on where you can place your dice as you are choosing them.
Or because you left 3 single squares of different colors at the end of an area.
Yeah, so the game will continue on again, just like in original Noch Mall, until somebody has completed 2 of the colors fully. If you're playing solo, you just use 4 dice, 2 of each kind, and you have a specific number of rounds. I've played tons and tons and tons of solo Noch Mall because I have the app. It's a really great app, and I just can, jam out a game in 3 or 4 minutes, and do repeatedly, very often, anytime I have time to kill.
Is there an app for So Good?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Come on, app developers.
So how do you like this as compared to the original?
I think it's awesome. As somebody who has really pretty much worn through base Noch Mall, I love having more stuff to do, and I really do feel like it has interesting, exciting new additions. One thing I will say is that since I have played so much Noch Mall solo, playing Noch Mall So Good solo is kind of easy because the new features make it really, really easy to fill out your sheet. Some of the stuff on that gold die is like, fill an entire color block for free, and just cross out 3 blocks in this row, or here's a free bomb, here's a free heart, and those make it really easy. I am pretty sure that I came close to maxing out the score in a game of Noch Mall So Good just because I never had to use a joker. Maybe I used like 1 or 2 jokers, and I got my hearts up really fast, so I completed every square on the board before I ran out of time, kind of stuff. It was good. It was really good.
So it seems like Noch Mall, and I agree with the statement. I'm playing devil's advocate, but I agree with the statement that Noch Mall So Good is better if you have people of perhaps not the best Noch Mall skill.
Well, I mean,
like if you've got people who aren't aces at the original game, Noch Mall So Good might be a better fit for them because you have those mitigating factors.
maybe. I feel like you have a lot more flexibility in So Good, but you also have the opportunity to get your score a lot higher as you learn more about the way the game works. Frankly, I'm going to continue playing both of them. I feel like they're both worth having around. I'm totally fine having both of these, and not just because I'm obsessed with Noch Mall.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, but like they're small enough that I could throw them both in the same box really if I wanted. And I feel like that would be justified because they're similar, they're different enough that there's a situation for both. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can continue to play Noch Mall base and on the app. And also we have like 7 different sheets for Noch Mall base.
To be clear, it's not a base game. It is a different game.
Yeah, Noch Mall Classic.
There we go.
Encore. So yeah, I have it on good authority that Noch Mall So Good will make it over to the States at some point. Unsurprisingly, Encore has been selling really well, so I would assume anything else in this kind of roll and write box will make it over here at some point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, keep an eye out for Noch Mall So Good, because it's so good. All right, up next, Spy Club 2018, released from Foxtrot Games and Renegade Game Studios. Plays 2 to 4 players in 45 minutes. Designed by Randy Hoyt and Jason D. Kingsley. This has art by Dan Blanchett and Danielle, I'm tagging you in.
I think that's Bartłomiej Kordowski and Malwina Kwiatkowska and Keith Pishnery
And Helen Zhu. Yeah, and this is a game of card manipulation, sneaky kids, and solving crimes.
So in Spy Club, each player has a set of double-sided cards, and the cards are predominantly a color. They have art on them, but really what you care about is the color. What you're going to be doing is trying to create sets at the top board of each of the different colors at a time. What this represents is figuring out different aspects of the mystery that you're trying to solve. You're going to do this by flipping over the cards or by drawing cards from sort of a central trade row, which you're going to spend a resource, I believe it's called Insight, that you will get throughout the game. You're going to manage how much of that you have. And when you are trying to either place your cards or flip them over, the amount of the resource that you need to spend is going to be determined by how far they are from your central anchor point, which is a magnifying glass that you're able to move around on your card row as well. So you're trying to balance getting the cards up relatively quickly in groups because there is sort of a game timer where the criminal may escape if you take too many turns, because at the end of every turn he is going to progress towards the end of the game and almost escape maybe. Ooh. He's also, I believe, going to get rid of some of the progress that you've made towards solving the mystery. Mm-hmm. But you are trying to do that, but you're also trying to make sure that you are making the most efficient turns by moving that magnifying glass. So maybe I'm going to move it from one side closer to the other so I can spend fewer of the inside resource to be able to place those cards up or flip them over. Or maybe I'll wait a turn to take the card that I really want to take into my tableau because it will cost less of the resource to take it off the trade row as it gets closer to the end of the trade row. So you are going to be trying to do this, and you're trying to get a group of each color before the criminal escapes, and that is a solving of the mystery.
You did it. You did a solve.
If you'd like, you can play this as a campaign game. You can play it as a one-off, which is what we did, but the campaigns are made up of 5 different mysteries, so you go through this and you play it 5 different times. And there are some effects that go on from one game to the other that are from a deck of cards, and you're going to gain different abilities after you complete the mystery, or each mystery in that campaign. What'd you think of Spy Club?
Mechanically, I thought it was a lot of fun. Honestly, I think where this game really shined was that kind of campaign-style deck. That was what draws me to want to play it again, is that it was a really interesting way of kind of developing the game as you play. Kind of like we saw in Fog of Love. You know, it starts out with a very simple setup, and then as you play the game, you're flipping over cards from that story deck, and it's going to add some more complexity and some more rules and things that you have to learn about to manage your way through the game. I like that a lot, and the actual mechanics of it were fun. It wasn't incredibly complex, and I felt like it was, pretty easy to kind of figure out where we needed to go. I didn't feel like we were super challenged to solve that first mystery, but again, maybe that's just because it's the first game, and they want you to, get hooked and really get a feel for it.
Yeah, I did want to play it again after we finished our game. I know we had something to do, so we weren't able to play another game right away, but I came out of that first game being like, oh, I could play the next mystery now. We've got our updated conditions from beating the first. I could do that again.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how much that would evolve if we continue to play it more.
I'm not sure how many times I'd want to replay it, though. Like, after you go through a campaign, which is 5 games, is it still going to be fun and fresh, or is it going to be like, okay, I've seen what this game has to offer. I've flipped as many flips as I can flip.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, and it looked like where we ended our game kind of did lead in one of several directions. So maybe there is some branching, different ways through the cards depending on how you do it. But again, it's kind of like the Pandemic Legacy problem. Like, if you don't like playing Pandemic Legacy is just variations on a theme. And this, I feel like, no matter how, many times you replayed it in different directions, you'd probably still be working on that same theme. So I'm wondering if the narrative and the new ideas added in would be enough to keep me interested for 5+ games.
Now, one of the things that was interesting is they added sort of a strategic play element. Some of the cards that you have are not one of the 5 colors that you're trying to find groups of. They're gray. And what those cards do is, ostensibly, they block up your trade row so that you can't be moving those cards towards solving the type of mystery. But what they also do is that if the escape card that you trigger at the end of your turn causes the pawn to land on one of those gray cards, it doesn't have the negative effect, because the negative effect that is occurring at the end of each turn is based on the color of the card that token stops on. So if you do have those gray cards in your trade row blocking up your trade row, yes, you're not going to be able to have as many options to move things up to create the sets, but you're also going to have fewer negative consequences as the person moves, or the pawn moves around for those escape cards. So it is a little bit of a balancing act there, which I thought was a little bit more interesting, and which became apparent, fairly quickly, but as we started playing that game. Now, that discovery of, oh, this is the thing that we need to do, wouldn't happen the second time we played it. Like, it was the thing that was interesting to see, that there was that little bit of strategy. But at the same time, it wasn't something that was like, oh, this is revolutionary. It was like, oh yeah, you need some filler in your hand so that you're gonna not absolutely destroy your game.
Yeah, a lot of neat concepts in there. I would definitely play it again if we came across it and had a reason to, or had some time to. Yeah.
I'm not rushing out to buy it, but I would play it again.
Cool. Well, that is Spy Club. Ta-da-da. Danielle, I feel like you're going to have to do a lot of explaining of games in this one because, frankly, you got to play a lot more games than I did, primarily because I spent a good, 8 hours or so demoing Escape Tales.
Freaking ditched me.
Well, yeah, but I got to play Escape Tales for 8 hours,
Yeah,
and that's a
did.
plus. So, Danielle, maybe you could tell us a little bit about adventure games The Dungeon, the 2019 release from Cosmos. It plays 1 to 4 players in 75 minutes, designed by Matthew Dunstan and Phil Walker Harding, with art by Martin Hoffman. It's apparently an escape, quote-unquote, room-style game with exploration and getting so frustrated.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Because I did I can't tell you very much more about this game, but I put it on here because we're not going to be talking about it again because I'm so frustrated with this game I won't play it again.
Oof.
I did something wrong, and I got to a point where I couldn't continue. And let me at least go through how the game plays.
Yeah.
This is one of these escape the situation style games where you have 3 separate scenarios. That's why it's 75 minutes. It's 75 minutes per scenario, and there are 3 in the box. And you wake up and you find yourself in a dungeon, and you are going to look at things. And when you go to an area, you read a little passage from like a Choose Your Own Adventure, and you may gain some additional cards, which are items that your character can carry. You may encounter an opponent, which may cause you to take damage. You may get parts of, some puzzles that are already established in the environment. You may find a new puzzle, and you're essentially just walking around reading these different little passages, trying to find your way to whatever the goal of the scenario is in the first, and you're just trying to escape the dungeon that you're in because it's called The Dungeon.
Oh.
And in the second, I won't say what happens in the second one because A, I didn't get to the end of it, and B, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who might want to play it. But you essentially are finding the answers to puzzles as you go through the different areas of the dungeon, and you may get a card to place over an area zone so that it changes the things that are available to you. And you're going to keep going and just walking around. And I like I said, I reached a point where I had no keys to unlock any of the puzzles that I had, and I must have done something wrong because that is not a situation that you should be able to find yourself in. I didn't see anybody else that was complaining about it online. But at that point, I was 3 or so hours into the game.
Oof.
And I don't know where I made the mistake and what I was missing that I should have had. And I'm absolutely not going to go back and replay those 3 hours of gameplay. They were not that stimulating.
That's rough.
So I don't know what it is, but the fact that it was so easy to become very gridlocked made me really frustrated, and I don't know where it was. So I'm sure I've heard other people talk about this game, and they really enjoyed it. The theme was nothing to me. You're walking around a freaking dungeon, and it was just
generic.
It was some generic fantasy, but I was very stressed out by this game. I got to the end of the first scenario, and I just decided to start the next one because I didn't have really I had to be playing something by myself. You were demoing stuff. But I didn't really want to, and then I got to the middle of that one, and I was just like, oh, I don't have anything I need. Done. We're done with this.
And moving on.
So that is obviously my fault. It is not the fault of Cosmos or the Adventure... What is it?
Adventure Games?
Games The Dungeon. Oh, it's such a good name. Adventure Games The Dungeon.
Enticing.
It's not the fault of the game that I screwed something up. I will 100% own that. But I will also say that I'm not going to waste my time going back to figure out what it was. And I don't know. I didn't feel like this grabbed me in any kind of way.
I don't know. I think also the fact that we have played Escape Tales and we find it so enamoring probably also colors this, because it seems like such a generic setting and generic kind of style. And, whether or not you are in for the darkness and the bleakness of Escape Tales, you can definitely not call them generic.
The thing that I'm very much coming to realize is that with these escape room games...
Yeah.
Everybody has the thing that makes one better than the others for them.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to Mile High Game Guys in, I think, their not last episode, but the one before. Mm-hmm. And Adrian played Escape Tales, and he played this Adventure Games The Dungeon. Absolutely loved Adventure Games The Dungeon. Hated Escape Tales. One of the reasons that he hated it, I have a little bit of a question about. But everybody has a thing that makes one game better than the other for them.
Yeah.
This is not the one for me, and I don't necessarily think it would be the one for you.
Yeah.
Just because you like a lot of the same things about Escape Tales that I do.
Yeah.
This wasn't super puzzly.
That's a bummer.
It was very much like Unlock, where you're trying to find the key that goes with this puzzle, and then you do it, and you're good.
Does it have a lot of finding tiny numbers on cards kind of stuff to link to the next card.
It's more like you have to go to this place to find this thing, and then you get X item, and you take X item to Y position, and you read the passage, and if you have this, then you proceed in this good way.
Gotcha.
That's why I got stuck, because I was out of keys to put into the locks, which I had. I'm sure that if this is the type of thing that you absolutely enjoy, it'll be fun. There are going to be lots of people who like these. I know for a fact there are lots of people that like this particular game. Was not for me.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer, because I know I've been looking forward to that for a while, but I also trust your opinion on these things, and frankly, I don't have time to sit by myself playing a game that you don't want to play, because it ain't going to be good. That's not how it works.
Okay.
So yeah, adventure games, not for us. Danielle, you want to just jump ahead to the other game that you played at this rough time where I was doing the demos?
Are you talking about Quirky Circuits?
I'm talking about Quirky Circuits.
Okay, I actually got to play Quirky Circuits with Eric Buscemi from Cardboard Horde.
Can I do the stats?
You can.
2019 release from Plaid Hat Games, plays 2 to 4 players in 15 to 30 minutes, designed by Nikki Valens, with art by Danielle Reeves, with hidden programming, variable maps, and forced hands? What does that mean? Forced hands.
Well, it means that there are cards that you're going to be forced to play in this programming game. We played a 3-player game of this, and the way that Quirky Circuits work is it's like the Stuffed Fables game where you've got a spiral-bound
the storybook
map
thing.
book. So you're going to flip to whatever map you're going to be working on in this particular game. I played one where we were trying to make a Roomba go around a little living room without knocking stuff off of tables. And I played one where there was a sushi robot in the center, and it was trying to pick up the sushi and give it to the people who wanted the sushi on the sides of it.
Robot.
Everybody's going to be given cards, and some of your cards may be of one type, which is the kind that needs to be played first, and some of them are cards that you can play at any point after that. You're going to go through, and everybody's going to be placing their cards, and the cards are things like move forward 2, move back 1, turn to the left, turn to the right, do an about face, typical programming robot movement type stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to be playing them face down in the center of the board. Everybody has to play at least one card, and if you have any of those cards which are required to be played first, you need to play them before you play any of your cards that aren't required to be played first. So you need to mitigate any damage that you know that you're doing, but you don't actually know that you're doing it because you don't know what everybody else has played. So once everybody has laid out their cards and they've reached the point where they're like, oh, no, I think I'm done. I don't want to add to this mess any longer. You are going to flip over the cards and tell the robot, not tell the robot, but move the robot in the way that the robot is programmed now to be moved.
Which I'm guessing will be nothing like you want it to actually be.
Oh, undoubtedly. And maybe it lucks into something that you wanted anyway, or maybe you make an absolute mess of it.
Yeah.
But then you'll find where you end up, and you'll continue going, and you're trying to do this before a certain number of turns runs out.
So what kind of targets are you going for in any particular scenario? Just like get to this position or go to this position in this order?
Well, in the Roomba one, we were trying to clean up dust that was on the floor and get back to our charging station.
Okay.
By a certain number of turns, and the dust tokens are placed out based on the map at the beginning, and if you were to knock anything off of a table because you hit into it, it becomes another piece of dirt that you need to clean up with your Roomba. Because you can just like sweep up a whole vase with a Roomba, right?
Vase becomes dust.
If it falls far enough.
True.
In the Sushi Chef one, the robot had a long arm and a short arm, and it was a conveyor belt, and you were trying to pick up the sushi and give it to the characters that wanted specific orders before any of the sushi fell into the trash at the end.
Okay.
We failed that one miserably.
So like the conveyor belt kept moving and sliding stuff on?
Yeah, as it slid things down, and as you picked stuff up and you turned it, the robot had different lengths of arms, so one reached the far and one reached the near.
Yeah.
And if you took something and put it on the outer ring right by the wrong way, it was going to fall very quickly, and your game was going to end very quickly. It was an interesting programming game. I'm not a huge programming game fan. The fact that you had this uncertainty between the players of what had happened was kind of interesting, But a problem that we frequently had was people would think that cards were what they were not. So I thought this was a move backward 1, but it was actually a move backward 3. Oh no.
Oh no.
Which is the fun of it, I think. Like when you flip it over and you're like, oh, I did that very, very badly. And you have a laugh. This is a really short game for every level. So you're not going to be destroying like an hour's worth of work because you put the wrong card there. You're going to be destroying like 5 minutes worth of work. And maybe it'll be fine. Maybe somebody else did something else that will accidentally put you in a great place because you turned the wrong way. It's fine. Don't worry about it. One little nitpick I have with the production on this is that the card that turns you around 180 degrees has a 270-degree circle on it. So it looks...
That's not what that is at all.
It looks like it is going to be sort of the opposite of turning in one direction, but it actually just flips you 180 degrees. And if you read it, that's what it says, but it like the icon is wonky at best. So if you want like a light programming game that has lots of different options and has cute artwork on it with the fun little robots, this is fine. If you aren't into programming games like me, it's a pass.
Yeah.
But I had more fun with it than I thought I was going to, which I guess is the mark of a good game in a style that you're not crazy about when you have more fun than you think you're going to.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Yeah, I would like to get a chance to play this one, and conventions like this are kind of the perfect thing for it. Maybe we'll have a chance to play it over at Whose Turn? Would you play it again?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. How long is a particular session's not super long?
Yeah, like I said, it's like 15 minutes.
Yeah. So,
you have a limited number of rounds that can be done. And unless you play with people who have like major AP, and in any case, you can't really do that if any one person doesn't, because they'll just put down cards and then you're kind of stuck with it. And everybody has to play at least one card a round. So unless you're waiting on that one last person. But I think the fact that you have cards that need to be played first sort of mitigates analysis paralysis, because I only have one card that I am allowed to play. It's just a matter of when do I play it.
Yeah.
So you got to pay attention to what you think other players might be playing. And the backs of the cards give you like a vague idea of what they might be, whether it's movement or repositioning or whatever.
Yeah.
So if I think you played this, I need to make sure that if I have movement and I want to put it in between a turn and another turn, that I'm paying attention and not waiting and not like analyzing what to do. I need to be in the moment because I need to be able to insert the card where I think it's needed.
Cool. Well, that is Quirky Circuits.
So now you get to do some talking, because we both got to play Cascadia, which is a 2020, fingers crossed, Kickstarter from Flat Out Games. It plays 1 to 4 players in 30 to 45 minutes. It is designed by Randy Flynn, and the art is hopefully going to be by Beth Sobel.
Oh, no, it is.
The copy we played did not have art by Beth Sobel. It was a prototype. It is a game of tile laying, pattern making, and families of bears.
Bears.
Different sizes of families of bears.
Different sizes of bears themselves. I assume they're not all the same bear.
No, that would be weird.
Bear clones. Clone bears. No, not good?
Don't clone bears.
Sorry. Anyway, this is going to be coming to Kickstarter from Flat Out Games, who just gave us Calico late last year. Not physically gave us Calico, but we did it. I guess actually they did send us a copy that we played and then sent on, and the cat moved on its way. Calico was cool, and it had hexagon tiles. This game, also hexagon tiles, very different. Significantly different.
Yes.
Yes. So in Cascadia, you are building out your own personal area of tiles, these hexagon tiles that are different land types. You'll be drafting them out of a center row as the game goes on, just taking one, refill the row, so on and so forth. And you're going to be trying to build kind of big swaths of terrain in your particular area, because those larger chunks of terrain are going to be more useful to you in certain ways. You're going to score points for different sizes of terrain. But in addition to that, each terrain tile has a specific kind of animal that can go on it, which is another set of tokens that you can be acquiring throughout the game. These animals all have their own individual scoring conditions that are randomized each game, that are randomized each game, depending on what cards you put out, and they will rely on adjacency and kind of geographical relations to the other animals. So, for example, one animal might want to have none of its kind near it, and if you have an animal that doesn't have anything else of its kind around it, it'll score a bunch of points. Some need to be in packs, some want to be in different size groups all over your terrain, and basically you're just working on drafting the best combinations of tiles and animal tokens to maximize your end of game points there. It's a pretty quick and simple to understand game that is going to, as you play and you start to get a feel for the way the different cards work, you're going to obviously learn a lot more about how it will function and how those cards are going to interact with each other, and then you can start coming up with really interesting combos and interesting strategies. So it's kind of similar in a way to Calico in that the more you play it, I feel like the more you're going to understand the patterns you want to make. It is definitely a pattern-based hex tile laying game, but with different stuff.
I'm not entirely sure you're going to get better at it, though, because those animal conditions are going to be changing in different games.
I'm going to get real good at sharks.
You're not always going to want to have eagles by themselves or bears in groups of 1 and a group of 2 and a group of 3.
Mm-hmm.
So as the conditions for the animals change, that may change the way that you are able to strategize. Also, what animals come out when? Like, the first half of our game, I think we were really starting to wonder if there were any elk in the bag at all. But there were. We found them. They all just came out towards the end.
Sneaky elk sleeping in late.
I think that the terrain is going to be a little less variable.
Yeah.
Because you're always wanting to create big areas of the types of terrain that you have because you're going to score more points for having big areas of it. Mm-hmm. But I feel like unless you have a really weird animal combination, that's always just going to be like, place the terrain in the way that best makes big areas.
Make a big old mountain. Yeah, it's fun, and I'm really starting to appreciate, I feel like we're seeing a lot more of these same set of tiles, but different scoring cards combinations for each of the tiles. Like Tiny Towns did that for one. Where the different houses all have different rules about adjacency. And this one does that kind of a similar thing, but in a different way. And I like that. I really like playing in that space. And I think anytime I get hex tiles more than square tiles, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah, I know when we got Calico, it had a lot of AP for some folks in our group because you are trying to manage those 2 variables of color and pattern. Here, you're still trying to manage 2 variables of animals which can only live in certain types of habitat. Like, you don't want to put an entirely mountain tile here if you need to put a fish there, because fish don't live in a mountain.
Fish don't live in... Well, I mean, unless there's a lake in the mountain.
Well, then it's a lake then, isn't it?
Oh. Well, you're right.
But you have a little bit of flexibility, because each tile can support multiple... almost all of the tiles can support multiple animals, and you can sort of work with what you've created a little bit more. It has a little bit more malleability than the tiles do in Calico.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that if you really liked the difficult grinding puzzle of Calico, this is going to feel a little bit light to you. I know we both came out of it saying this game was fun, but I kind of would rather play Calico. Yeah. But if you have people in your group that very much thought that puzzle was too crunchy, and there are a lot of people, we have played Calico with people who thought that. I think this would be a really nice sort of middle ground where you're trying to work with those multiple variables, but it is not so ironclad in the way that you're placing things out.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing more about this game as it goes on. Hopefully we can get a chance to play it again before the end of the year. But yeah, that is Cascadia, coming soon-ish to Kickstarter from Flat Out Games.
I vaguely remember him saying later in the year. So,
well, there you go. Later-ish. At some point in the future from when you're hearing this, unless you're listening way in the future. All right, Danielle, you're going to tell me about some friggin' jam?
I am going to tell you about some friggin' jam.
Newfoundland Jam 2018, released from Jason Anarchy Games, plays 2 to 4 players in 20 to 45 minutes. It is designed by Jason Anarchy with adorable art by Kelly Bastow. This is a game of order fulfillment, hand management, and that friggin' jam burglar.
Who is a raccoon?
Yes.
In a big old...
Got the mask built in.
Big old Gorton's Fisherman style
Can't trust
hat.
raccoons. They've already got the mask and they're doing crimes. Raccoon crimes.
So we had gotten this out of the library at PAXu because I had seen it at a bunch of cons. I think I had seen it at Gen Con last year because it was in that sort of entrepreneur alley that I am so fond of walking up and down. And they had a really actually nice sized booth at PAX Unplugged, which I was surprised to see because they had sort of a smaller booth at Gen Con. And I was like, this game is too cute. I need to play it. They absolutely live in the theme in this game. And I really wanted it to be a fun game. I wanted to have an excuse to buy this game. And it didn't really turn out that way. It's a fine game, but it is a game where you are drawing cards into your hand in order to fulfill recipes. You are just taking cards from that center trade row, and you are trying to make the specific type of jam that are called for. You may need to get some equipment to maybe can your moose meat.
Yeah.
Or maybe filter the jam or whatever. But you're trying to take cards from that center row and beat the other player to completing recipes. There is the Jam Burglar, who is going to allow you a little bit of flexibility because he has some special abilities. Especially, I think we played with some more advanced variant cards that had it had fancy jams, but it also had more Jam Burglar cards in it. But really, this is a fairly basic game that absolutely lives and dies by its theme. The theme is great. They really leaned into that Newfoundland style, which is not a thing that I had any knowledge of, that there was this Canadian stereotype of Newfoundlanders. But, like, immediately when you read the rulebook and they put the flavor text in the rulebook and everything's on the cards, that's funny. Like, they lean into the theme and they get you on board with their theme, and it was absolutely great. But the game itself is a pretty straightforward, collect the ingredients and beat the other player to playing the recipe style game.
Yeah, it was fun, but I think a lot of the fun I had of it was really just looking at the card, looking at the art, and also...
Freaking Jam Burglar.
Freaking Jam Burglar. But yeah, it was fun. Quick, easy play. Definitely, worth a play at a convention. If somebody's got some jam and they're willing to share it. Newfoundland jam, not actual jam.
I mean, maybe jam.
Now, like, really, if somebody came up to you at a convention and be like, yo, you want some jam? How would you be about that?
Do I know the person?
You do not know the person.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
How about if you do know the person?
I don't know. Like, if there are some people that if they walked up to me with, like, a jar of jam and were like, want some?
You'd be like, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me out that jam.
Yeah.
Let me out that jam. No.
But not many people.
Not many people. No.
I make bad decisions, too. Especially when it comes to jam.
All right, we've gotten to a point in the show where we need to take ourselves a quick break. So maybe we will go take a quick break and come back afterwards to talk a little bit more about PAX Unplugged.
Yes.
Sound like a thing to do?
Sounds like a thing to do.
A thing to do.
Jake, do you like deck builders?
They're fine, but I'm getting bored of building decks for deck's sake. I need something more in my deck builder to really get me excited.
How about a board of hex tiles that you fly your pirate spaceship around, purchasing new cards from different sectors?
That sounds right up my alley for sure, but could I also get some ship-to-ship combat and competing for influence in each sector in an ever-increasing race for better positioning?
I think you'll find exactly that in Tortuga 2199 on Kickstarter now from Grey Fox Games.
I bet they'll even include upgraded player tokens and a 5th player expansion to this Kickstarter. How long do I have to check it out?
Tortuga 2199 is live until February 13th, so you've got a few weeks to check it out.
All right, sounds like a plan. Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted. In space. Space Pirates. So, those are games played at PAX Unplugged.
Certainly they are.
Several games. So yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I kind of wanted to jump in kind of near this part of the episode, talk about PAX Unplugged again, just kind of on the whole overall about, how we felt about it. So again, this is your first year going to PAX Unplugged. It was, significantly smaller than previous conventions, but we still had a lot of fun stuff and did a lot of fun stuff in the area there. We ran into a lot of friends and got to, meet up with a lot of people. You got to meet Eric Buscemi for the first time.
Did get to do that.
Yeah, and a number of other Punch
Nice
Book Media
man.
friends. We saw Jeff from the Mile High Game guys.
We certainly did. We got to hang with Jeff quite a bit.
Yeah, Jeff was kind of our hang buddy because he was over here demoing for Asmodee and was able to kind of get in and do some Fantasy Flight demoing. He did like Final Hour and the other game. Oh, Starfarers, right. Yeah, but it's I don't know. I really like PAX Unplugged. It's a chill, big convention. It's very, it's big. It's definitely big. It's got a big vendor hall and just a massive open area. But it's also, again, it's not Gen Con crushing. So everybody, or not everybody, but tons of people are there, but it's never so crowded you can't deal with it. I felt like I never had a hard time getting around.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like there's some, levels of scale there, though. Like, the vendor hall is a nice-sized vendor hall, but it is nowhere near the amount of folks that you have at a vendor hall at something like Gen Con.
Yeah.
And they have tens of thousands of people, certainly, somewhere above 10,000 people. I think they were probably closer to being between 20 and 30,000.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
But I feel like the space and the city itself is better equipped to deal with that many people.
Mm-hmm.
Like we say every year at the end of Gen Con, that Gen Con is sort of pushing up against the boundaries of what Indianapolis can handle.
Yeah.
And I think the housing lottery is the best example of that. They essentially book out the entire downtown Indianapolis hotel block for the weekend.
Yeah.
And if you can get there, you can get there. If not, you're going to be way the hell out.
Yeah.
I think Philadelphia has a little bit more bandwidth to accommodate people. Like, there's just more space in the city and more accommodation, and everything is a little bit more geared towards having a lot of people there. The Philadelphia Convention Center seemed like a really good space for having that many people. It never felt like everybody was trying to get through the same one hallway at the exact same time, even when people were all trying to get through the same hallway at the exact same time. Like, it didn't feel as absolutely crushing as Gen Con can, and I think that is just a function of the city that it's in. I also really enjoyed the fact that it was in a city I wanted to go to. Nothing against Indianapolis, but it is not a place I would probably choose to go on vacation every year.
Yeah.
But it was nice to be like, oh, we're just going to go up to Philly. I flew up to Philly, and it was nice and cheap to get there because it's a hub airport. And just, go. There were lots of cool things to do around the city as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Philadelphia is one of those cities that if you like food, you're going to be very, very happy. Indianapolis has a lot of...
Do people not like food?
Some people just eat food to eat food. Some people really like to, go out and try a lot of things. In Philadelphia, you've got Reading Terminal Market right there, which is obviously, big, not open market, but a big market with a bunch of little stalls. You can get every kind of cheesesteak you would ever want, including one with American cheese, which is the way you should have a cheesesteak.
Disagree.
But they'll also let you have whiz or provolone if you're wrong.
They will.
Huh?
They will let you have that.
If you're wrong.
I'm not wrong.
Yeah. There's also, other options. There's pizzas, there's salads, there's all sorts of ethnic food. Also, can we talk about just like restaurants in Chinatown and how good those are? Because Chinatown is literally 1 block from the convention center.
Yes.
And it was so, so delicious.
Yeah, we got a little bit of inside information on where to go from someone who actually knew a little bit more than we do.
Thanks, Josh.
And it was delicious.
Yeah, and there's also plenty of places to go nearby. Like if you wanted to go do some fun things, there's plenty of things in Philadelphia as well.
Yeah.
So like if you're on the East Coast and you want to go to a gaming convention, I think this is a really great one to go to if you want to see that big spectacle but not deal with the Gen Con over spectacledness.
Yeah, and like I had mentioned earlier, I think the fact that it's not in the middle of what is generally considered convention season, I would venture to say that this is the end of convention season. PAX Unplugged is the last big convention, because it is in late December. Like, you're right up against the holidays there. And the fact that it was removed from all of that made it less stressful just all around.
Yeah.
There wasn't the hot game that everybody wanted to go rush to see to make sure that they got a copy of, or, there was nothing that was absolutely pressing that you, if you were there, like we would be generally just trying to look at what's new and what's noteworthy. There was nothing that was absolutely just like the scoop that you had to make sure that you got.
Yeah.
It was just like walk around and see what's interesting to you, play the games that are interesting from the library, play maybe some older games, talk to some publishers that don't generally have time or space at larger conventions. Just like go and have a good time, and maybe don't run around like absolutely stressed to the max.
I thought PAX Unplugged had a really similar feel to Origins. I went to Origins for the very first time this year and experienced it in a very similar way. I did some demoing for Floodgate games back at Origins. I demoed for Board and Dice at this particular one. I really definitely think PAX Unplugged is already bigger than Origins in terms of attendance. The crowds are way different, though. I mean, Origins is definitely more the hardcore gamer. PAX Unplugged is definitely more the casual gamer as well. But even over 2 years, I'm seeing that shifting a lot and seeing a lot more of the quote-unquote hardcore game crowds start to go to PAX Unplugged, because it is a convention on the East Coast, which is something we don't really have at that scale, that, was really, really good for, all different sorts of board games, from, your very casual up to your very strategy heavy. And then also there's a huge D&D and role-playing games contingent at PAX Unplugged as well. I think kind of fueled by the Acquisitions Incorporated from Penny Arcade kind of being a big part of the PAX brand for a long time.
Yeah, that was like, of all the things that made it feel like a PAX convention, honestly, the role-playing signups were the thing that, to me, that made it seem most like a PAX convention. Because PAX is like Dragon Con, where like sometimes you just get in a line for a thing and you wait for the thing, and if you get the thing, good for you. And if you don't, there's no real pre-sign up. I think that was the one thing that Gen Con has over PAX Unplugged, other than like sheer mass.
Yeah.
was that their event system is much more robust and you can sign up for stuff ahead of time. Whereas for like role-playing games, I went on, I think it was Friday morning to go to try to sign up for a role-playing game. And it wasn't super clear in the signups that they were only doing signups for that day, that morning. Mm-hmm. So when I went and got in line, the thing that I was going to go was full up already. I was like, oh, is that for all that? And oh, no, it's just that day. And if you want to try it again the next day, you go back the next morning, which is fine. I mean, if you know that's the thing, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more robust, like, event management.
Yeah. I don't understand. This is something that's always confused me about PAX, because like every other board game convention we go to, you have ticketed signups and you're able to pick from your event catalog and sign up for stuff that way. It's weird to me in a way to go to a convention that says, you want to do this thing? Wait in a line for 2 hours, because that just takes 2 hours away from your convention time. I mean, but this is what PAX has always done. And I don't know. Maybe that's just, something that we're not used to in the board game convention world. That's come from the pop culture kind of stand in line for, Nathan Fillion to sign your book kind of thing. But I don't know. I just please like ticket events. I like ticketed events. It just makes everything easier. And then you don't sit in a line forever. I don't like lines at all. I really dislike sitting in lines.
I know.
I don't know if this has ever come up.
You are spoiled in that way.
How am I spoiled?
Because you don't wait in lines.
That doesn't mean that I'm spoiled. It just means that I don't want to wait in a line for a thing.
Either way, that was the one like gripe that I had with the convention, was that the event system was almost non-existent.
Also, PAX's merch game is insane compared to every other convention. They are on point. They know how to get. PAX is good at getting money from people. Yeah,
that's what they do. That's why they've been so successful. And
that's why their mascot is the merch, the monster that, if you don't feed it, becomes a monster gremlin.
Yeah, I mean, no shade to them. That they're a business.
Yeah, they're a business.
They're trying to make people's money, and if you can have a really awesome time while they make your money, then everybody ends up happy, I suppose.
I will continue to purchase PAX pins.
Yes, they did have very cute pins.
Yeah, so other conventions. So we are kind of always, this time of year, starting to think about our convention season. Obviously, we've got Whose Turn Is It Anyway coming up this weekend. Small, 400-person convention. We've got Geek Way to the West is the next kind of step up for us this year, is in June this year.
In terms of,
weekend,
like, size.
Yeah.
We're not making a quality judgment there.
No. And then Origins is the week right after that, so we're probably not going to go to that.
I'm certainly not.
Yeah, I think it's also like when I have a work meeting, so I don't know, maybe I'll just drive over to Ohio for a day if I'm allowed to. Maybe not. And then we've got Gen Con, is obviously middle of August. Is it middle or first week of August?
The last weekend in July.
Is it the last weekend in July this time?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, wow, really? So it's last weekend in July and then August 1st, 2nd. Huh. Okay. I'm going to have to put a mental note on that for later. And then...
some of us already had to put in our vacation time. I promise you, it's the last weekend in July.
And then this year, PAX Unplugged and BGG Con are the exact same weekend, which was true the very first weekend of first year of PAX Unplugged.
It will have been true 2 out of the 3 years, right?
Especially interesting because they told us the first year that it was just an accident, or not an accident, but it was a thing that they didn't want to have to do. But this is going to be the year that's really going to split a lot of people, I feel, because I feel like there's a lot of people that go to PAX Unplugged and BGG Con, especially vendors, and which one are vendors going to choose? The one that are the hardcore gamers that are playing a bunch of games that came over from Essen, or the one that has a lot of casual gamers and they can try to take their casual games and, that kind of stuff to an entirely new crowd. I mean, I feel like PAX is going to have a big chunk of the vendors this year, and I think BGG Con is going to take a little bit of a hit in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the folks that we talked to had sort of a heart and head dichotomy going on. Like, they had a loyalty to BGG Con because it's a thing that has supported them from when they started, but they only have so many people, and PAX is going to get them more money. A lot of vendors were saying, like, other than people who have like really heavy strategy games or deep games, like, if you've got lighter fare that you can move, or if you're not necessarily in gaming, you're in like gaming accessories or, bags or whatever.
Fancy dice.
It's more profitable to go to PAX Unplugged. There's 10 times more people there.
Yeah.
And they are probably easier to separate from their money. And they may not be as absolutely well informed, so they may be more willing to take a chance on something. So if you're looking to just get more money, PAX is probably the way to go. I mean, fees aside, I'm sure that there is a higher vendor fee to go to PAX Unplugged than to go to BGGCon.
Yeah, true.
But I feel like that's, like, if you're thinking with your wallet, that's the place to go. But a lot of these people have loyalty to BGGCon, and what are they going to do? Are they just going to not go, or are they going to try to split and have two booths and have them both be understaffed? I don't know. We're going to find out.
I bet that, because BGGCon is 5 days, and it's definitely, it's definitely longer than PAX. PAX is only 3 days. I would not be surprised if there is one or two vendors that will make an appearance at BGGCon and then fly to Philly. Just Bonacor, pretty much. Bonacor likes to be everywhere.
I mean, that's how he makes money.
So that's interesting. And of course, and I feel like we always talk about this, all you listeners out there, please look for your local, few hundred person conventions. We're big fans of our local Mega MooseCon that will be here in the fall. If I could find a reason or a way to be back up in Chicago, Mundelein, Illinois, to go to the Gaming Hoopla, I would do it again. That was so much fun. We're going to go up to Whose Turn this weekend. Again, same kind of thing. And I feel like those are the really great conventions if they're, they're that few hundred people size up to 1,000, because you just get to play games and meet a lot of good people and have a lot of fun.
I have a feeling we're going to have a sentiment similar to that in a few minutes.
Yes, perhaps. And conventions. It's true. But I think it is time to talk about some beer. So maybe we take a little beer-related break and you come back and tell us about a hop.
Yeah, let's get a palate cleanser bump in there.
Bam. All right, Danielle, it's time to tell us yet again about a hop.
Yes, we are continuing our hop series that I started, and then we immediately went on break, so we only talked about one hop. The hop we are going to be talking about this time are Columbus hops. And I picked this one not necessarily because it is the absolute most important hop, but because the story was fun.
Okay.
Columbus hops were originally bred by the USDA hop breeding program in Washington, which I know I've talked about before, by a man named Charles Zimmerman. And the way this program works, they have a main facility and they have like a secondary facility, and Charles Zimmerman was in charge of that secondary facility. But when he retired in 1979, there wasn't really anybody at that secondary facility to take over the hop program that he thought was qualified in any way. It is speculated, and there's lots of air quotes going on here, but nobody was really willing to make like a conclusive statement. But you'll see why this is a fairly conclusive argument. It was speculated that Charles Zimmerman took home some of the hops and grew them at his home. And then when he entered the private sector, he was working for a hop union. And they just somehow ended up with some Columbus hops breeding stock that they started breeding in the private sector. Nobody knows how. Somehow the place that this guy who bred this hop started working ended up with some. He was not supposed to take these hops home, just for the record. After he left Hop Union, he started working at Yakima Chief, which is another hop company. And Hop Union tried to patent the Columbus hop. But Yakima Chief was now somehow, don't know how, growing the same hop and selling it as Tomahawk hops. And these two companies got in a big old legal battle, because that's what companies do when they both want to have a copyright to something. Eventually, they came to an agreement where both would be able to continue selling the hops under their own brand name, but it would be marketed jointly under an LLC. There is a third variety of hops which is similar to this hop, to the Columbus hop / Tomahawk hop, which is called a Zeus hop. And they were patented by a company called Hopsteiner. And while it has similar characteristics, they did a gas chromatography on it, and it's not technically the same. But Columbus and Tomahawk have been proven through gas chromatography to be actually the same hop. So a lot of times people will talk about CTZ or Columbus Tomahawk Zeus hops. Zeus hops.
Oh, that's what CTZ is.
Yeah, that's what that is. But Zeus hops are technically a little bit different.
Oh.
There's no pedigree for Columbus hops, but they're likely, the parentage likely goes through English hops called Brewer's Gold. And it is said that they are wind pollinated, which means that the pollination could really have been from anything. Like, we left the hops out there and some spores got on it and we were good. And we made these hops and we like them.
Oh, these hops? I don't know.
They grow really well in a hot, dry climate, and they can be used for both bittering and as aroma hops, but mostly they're used for bittering. They have a really high oil content, which does make them really good for dry hopping. They have a pungent, resiny, earthy, and often spicy flavor. This can sometimes have an aroma of black pepper or licorice. The aroma can change to have qualities of marijuana, so that really dank smell that we refer to, it can have that if it's used heavily in the aroma end of the brew. But when they're really fresh, they can have an herbal flavor and like a lemon and citrusy back note. Not nearly like something like a citra hop that's going to be like punch you in the face with that citrus forwardness.
Juicy.
Like I said, these are pungent and resiny and earthy, but it can have some like a lemon back flavor. They're commonly used in imperial brown ales, barley wines, imperial stout, and American IPAs and pale ales. So if you're looking for an example of brews that are brewed exclusively with Columbus hops, you might want to try Avery Brewing Company's Hog Heaven Imperial Red Ale or Armadillo Ale Works Quakertown Imperial Brown Stout. These are both brewed with 100% Columbus hops, and as you can see, they're not really like what you would traditionally consider super hoppy beers. Where you can brew an IPA is if you mix Columbus with other hops. So we talked about Cascade before. A Columbus prominent beer that also has Cascade hops is Anderson Valley Brewing Company's Hop Otten IPA, which I think you've probably had. I know I've had it before.
Probably.
But it's one of their year-round IPAs, but they mix the Columbus with other hops because, like I said, it's primarily a bittering hop, so you want to get some of that Columbus flavor, but you also want it largely to bring the backbone of that IPA and bring up your bitteriness. That's why it's used in some of those styles that you may not immediately associate with hops, because it does bring a little bit of bitterness, and something like an oatmeal stout does need some bitterness to it, otherwise it would just taste sickly sweet from all the malt. So that is the Columbus hop. It is a fairly older beer. I mean, we're talking about being cultivated in the 70s. A lot of the hops that we will soon be talking about, just planning a little bit ahead, are much, much newer than that. But this is one of the ones that is...
It's a classic, a fundamental hop.
Yeah, it's maybe not so prominent as something like Cascade, where you're absolutely going to know it, and you're going to know that this is a hop that people use a lot. But it is something that brings a lot of character to beer, and I think also had a fun little story with all these air quotes and these, how did this end up here?
I don't know where this came from.
So that's Columbus hops.
Well, cool. And as usual, I'm sure you'll put some useful information in the show notes section of draftmechanic.net.
Gotta cite my sources.
All right. Well, there's only one thing left to do, and that's take this final bump music break and go to the final round.
How many bumps this episode?
Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com. Here it is, the final round, the round in which we are at the end of the podcast. That's what final rounds mean.
It certainly
Not
does.
the best intro I've had. I'm just trying to get back in the groove here. Anyway, in the final round, we put a question out to our Slack channel and also our BGG guild and asked for your feedback on a topic that we've discussed in an episode. And I guess starting last episode, I'm going to actually announce it on the episode so that we can all come back and talk about it next episode. So last episode was our 2019 review, and I asked everybody, what is your biggest gaming memory, moment, or surprise from 2019? Just basically share a cool story. I want to hear some things that everybody enjoyed about 2019 in gaming. So you want to start us out?
Sure. Paul and Bowden said, the biggest gaming surprise of 2019 for me was how much I enjoyed the Arkham Horror LCG. It's probably going to replace the Time Stories Blue Cycle for us this year for couples campaign game.
Time Stories Blue Cycle. We'll get there eventually.
Well, Paul and Bowden might not.
Paul, we'll let you know, because that is our sworn solemn duty. Solemn?
But I'm glad
Solemn
he's
duty.
enjoying the Arkham Horror LCG.
Yeah.
That's cool.
People seem to really enjoy that. Maybe I'll have to play it at some point. BJ from Board Game Gumbo, or Dr. Mr. BJ from Board Game Gumbo, if you're being formal, has these words to say. Ooh, biggest surprises. My biggest good surprise was playing and enjoying the Funkoverse. The only skirmish game I play, and not even on a regular basis, is Warhammer Underworlds, which I adore. I love the card play and the faction abilities, but I don't really play any other tabletop games of that genre until Funkoverse. For some reason, the craziness of seeing the Golden Girls help Batgirl defeat the Potter Universe baddies just appeals to me. The game is easy to teach, takes about 45 minutes, and so far, there's lots of replayability in mixing and matching the characters and special items. As for my disappointing surprises, I was very surprised I did not like Fantastic Factories as much as the rest of the playgroup.
Yes.
Looks like Danielle and I are on the same page here. I demoed it back at PAX South 2017 and was intrigued by the quick play and the engine building, but it fell flat. The moves just weren't that interesting. Caveat, I played this late night at BGGCon after a strong play of Aquatica, so I'm willing to give it another chance. It should be up my alley. Maybe a second look will be better. And then it is signed, Dr. BJ Gumbo Man. Not actually, I made that up.
Well, moving from BJ, we're going to go to MJ.
Oh.
She says, my biggest surprise of 2019 involved an older game. After avoiding it for years, I finally played Merchants and Marauders. By all accounts, it should not be a game I like, but I really enjoyed it and keep asking to play it again whenever the occasion allows. That's always cool when you have avoided something for so long and you're like, oh, I'm not going to like that, I'm not going to like that. And you play it and you're like, oh, dag.
Looks like I like this now.
Looks like I like that. I like to play it always.
Mm-hmm. Michael Lowry had some things to share as well. He says, the good, Spring Meadow. I usually completely suck at Tetris-style games, but I actually enjoyed playing this. I do like Spring Meadow. It's a lot of fun.
It's a good one.
It does have the little marmosets.
It does
Marmot? No, marmots.
Yeah.
Which one's which? Marmots are the furry ones, yeah?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. The Bad, Eco's First Continent. I heard that this was supposed to be good. I was leading for most of the game. I lost by 1 point on the final turn, did a very cool move, and still thought this game was trash. There's too little going on for its potential game length. It's also fiddly, and the graphic design is mediocre. When the game ends is too random, meaning that Ecos can and did very much overstay its welcome. Would not play it again.
Yeah, and I was talking to Michael actually at our most recent game night, and we were talking about this. We did play a rule wrong, which made it longer than it should have been. But even if we had played that role correctly, like the things that would have shortened it up, it still would have been longer than he would have liked, and I think I would have liked as well. We have a couple of more plays of that coming.
Mm-hmm.
So
get a little more
I'd like
about
to
that.
see how it shakes out, if that was sort of a outlier just based on the randomness factor.
Mm-hmm.
Peter says, my biggest surprise is that I actually liked the Terraforming Mars Turmoil expansion.
Ooh.
When I first heard they were adding an event deck to Terraforming Mars, I was not on board. But the ability to see events coming and to make plans to mitigate or exploit them is good. This is not an every time expansion, but I would like to explore it further.
We got to get to that one. I'm really excited to try that still.
So Terraforming Mars Turmoil is a sometimes food? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, as a treat.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to play this one because it does add that sort of politicking, which I am not really excited to put into my Terraforming Mars.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll give it a go. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say good things about it, and if somebody who didn't expect to like it ended up liking it, that's more of a tick to me than somebody who was like, oh yeah, I want politics in that, and then liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
And we had similar hesitations with both Prelude and Colonies, and both of those turned out to be pretty cool expansions.
Yeah.
Matt in Ohio says, my biggest gaming surprise of 2019 was easily Buckeye Game Fest here in Columbus, Ohio. My wife and I have been going to Origins for 6 years now, but never really thought to look into BGF as it seemed too small to be, quote, worth it, and the, quote, demographic didn't really jive with the people or games I really like to play with. But my local group, shout out to the Beers and Board Games of Columbus, was teaming up with BGF for some charitable initiatives. I volunteered for those, and we wound up attending BGF. It was my first small convention that was primarily focused on just playing games, and oh boy was it fun. Jake and Danielle have been banging this drum for a while, but I now join them in encouraging everyone to go find your small local convention and give it a look.
Yay!
Nice. Well, I'm glad that was good. I'm going to thumb it up literally right now because I realized I hadn't thumbed up that post yet. Thumb. I'm reading it right off of the guild right now.
I told you we would hear more about that sentiment of finding smaller conventions later.
Yeah.
Stewie answered with, my biggest memory is our friend, Joel Lewis, going to Gen Con and selling out his little game, Fluttering Souls.
Yay.
That whole year and build-up was intense and frustrating, and when it hit Gen Con and sold out was amazing.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's always good to see our friends doing successful things with what they've worked so hard on. And I'm glad to see that this was Stewie's biggest memory of the year. Like, his friend doing great at what he did.
Yeah.
Fluttering Souls was a fun little game.
Yeah, I'm super excited that they sold out of that Gen Con. That's just awesome. And
I bet Joel is as well.
Oh, yeah, no question. I talked to him, I think, on Saturday of Gen Con, and he was amazed how well it was going. So to be able to come home without a box of games, it probably feels fantastic.
Oh, I bet.
Congratulations yet again, Joel. And yeah. All right, so as we do, we round it out with Patrick Hillier, and his words of wisdom are, our biggest surprise was how much we liked Horrified. I have historically liked cooperative games, and Halloween is a huge holiday at our house. Combining the two was an obvious instant buy for me. As a fan of the classic monster movies, we love to see the different monsters and how they play. Also, hidden Easter eggs of villagers and items that don't impact play, but are fun to find for super fans. I have not had a chance to really look at that game, but I would like to probably look at it at some point because I trust Patrick Hillier to point me in the direction of a good game.
I would not have pegged Patrick and his wife for being super horror movie fans, but that's awesome.
All right, well, yes, we're ending up this particular final round with those words of wisdom. So our topic for the next episode ties into what we talked about in the middle of the show today. What do you look for in a gaming convention? What are your convention must-haves? As we're beginning a convention season, which is January now, thanks all the conventions in the world.
All seasons are convention season.
Yeah, I'm just interested to hear what everybody's thought on conventions. Do you want the little one? Do you want the big one? Do you want a big vendor hall? Do you want to have alcohol allowed in the convention center? Do you want to have...
I feel like one of those questions is tailored specifically to your wants.
Maybe I'm really happy that Whose Turn It Is It Anyway serves local craft beer in the gaming convention space.
They do that, which is
and
nice.
That's fantastic. So yeah, if you're interested, you can join in on the guild. Danielle, you'll put that in Guild 2470, and I will put that in the Slack channel under the hashtag Final Round Topic Slack thread channel. Yeah.
I don't know why they start them with all with pound signs.
Hashtag pound sign.
Yeah,
Hashtag Hash Brown Throwdown 2K15. And that is the sign that it is time for me to stop talking into a microphone. So thank you, dear listeners, for tuning into this episode and any other episodes of Draft Mechanic. You can find us on the internet at draftmechanic.net or boardgames.beer, an actual website that I've paid human money for. You can also find us on social media at Draft Mechanic, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places.
Board Game Geek Guild 2470 as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in the Charlotte area, our next local game night is going to be on February 6th at Good Road Cider Works, and the following one will be on February 18th at Salud Cerveceria. We would love to see you there.
Mm-hmm. Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Grey Fox Games. Visit greyfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest. And don't forget, Tortuga $21.99 is on Kickstarter right now, so you can go check that out. Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted. Awkward silence.
Well, usually you throw it to me so that I can tell everyone.
I forgot. I'm sorry. I always forget something right here, and I never know what it is.
I'd like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly and tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Bye. Draft Mechanic episode 115 was recorded on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020, in front of a live studio cat. He was actually really, really quiet this episode. Aww.
Is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Hey out there in podcast land, this is Brian, and I just wanted to invite you to check out my tabletop game review and preview video channel, Cloak and Maple. There, I check out a lot of Kickstarter games, as well as sneak in some fresh reviews of published games. Come and check out all of the bad acting in my attempts to be entertaining in my intros. Stay for a game overview and hear my thoughts of the game at the very end. You can find Cloak and Meeple on YouTube at youtube.com/cloakandmeeple.
Punchboard Media.
Where we all
Bring something
to the table.
Pull up a chair at
punchboardmedia.com.